Hello everyone and welcome to the stream. So happy to have you all. Oh my god, we're already at a hype train close and we just started. Hello Saki, rolling for initiative in the rolling for comment initiative. Well, you got a nat 20 because you were the first person to comment. And then hello Norfish, thank you for the 1 year resub. It's hard to believe it's already been a year, little kitty. Hype Citia. Hello, Mr. Samoose. Thank you for the resub 3 months running. Arise, Brave Knight. I hope you continue to enjoy those sweet, sweet Obsidia emotes. Hello, Scarth Mahart. Hello, Otaku Waifu Gon. Oh, my favorite busty, lusty vampire waifu. Aside from Olivia. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for the 100 bits, Mr. Samoose, and thank you for the gift sub. Nor to Seth Warrior of Spite. Oh my gosh, you guys are going hyphy. We would need a third person besides you two to do something. Mr. Samoose, thank you for the gift sub to Mahir. That's a cute little hamster you just gave a gift sub to. But I hope everybody is doing well today, and I hope you all had an amazing Friday. Welcome to the weekend. Happy to have ya. This was my day off from work, so because of that, I what's it called? I didn't really have to do anything, so I spent a long time overwriting a blackboard to do my my stream thumbnail, and then I played a bunch of Fire Emblem 3 Houses. I hit the time jump, and I felt very cheated because they gave you zero explanation as to why there was a time jump if you choose the Edelgard route. Oh, Scar, thank you for the 103 bits. You'll love to see it. Hype train, hype Citia. Chill. Thank you so much. We're on a hype train straight to Fun Town. What a way to start the day. But yeah, so that was my Friday basically. Super low key. And then what else is there? I feel like I had more stories, but now I don't remember any of them. Yeah, I hope everybody else's day was great. In Hype Citia news, if you're in several of the Discords I'm in, I posted that on Thursday. I made my first appointment for a consultation for my booba surgery. So I'm very excited about that. It's going to be February 28th. I'm going to go get the booba inspection. See if I like the surgeon. Get a talk about what we can do to engage Operation Mommy Milkers. And, you know, I'm super excited about that. Worked half a day, then grabbed some oysters and crackers and a couple bottles of wine. Here you are. What a day. What a day. You'll love to hear it. Hello, Carpus57. Carpus Diem. Welcome. But yeah, so that's like hype news. I have a kind of a headache right now and I don't know why. Hopefully I didn't make myself sick in some way. And then yesterday I had a friend over and we watched the new episodes of Vox Machina, which was entertaining. I have a lot of thoughts about the show. I didn't watch Critical Role, but it clearly, from everybody I've talked to who's watched Critical Role, the show is very highlight reel, which makes a lot of it like seem very nonsensical in the pacing. But that pun never occurred to me. I even studied Latin. Oh my God, Carpus, you now you know it. Now you can drop that everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, people always know the Carpus Diem is a diem that you gotta carp. Oh, Paladin Boots, hydrate, woman, you need to. Thank you, I will hydrate. Thank you. Thank you for the gift sub to Paladin Boots, Mr. Samoose. I'm sure that he will appreciate those sweet, sweet Obsidia emotes. Arise, Brave Knight. Can you shout out Otaku Waifu Gon, Brainbuster, please? She is a very fun streamer. She's very silly. She's a cute vampire, very lewd, very sweet. She also does these baller cosplays. She's got booba for days. Be sure to check her out. She's on the road to affiliate. And then hello, Alistair Nia. Welcome, welcome. And hello, Master Phil. Hello, Brain Buster. As a cat boy, I'm legally obligated to redeem Nia each stream I watch. Much appreciated. Oh my gosh, Cygnus, thank you for the gift subs. I'm sure Jarelli Belly, Underbred Umbra, Wandering Worm, VTuber Priscilla, and Yellow Jacket Karaguchi will like those sweet, sweet Obsidia emotes. Arise, brave knights. And this hype train is off the rails. We should probably call emergency services. Level 2 complete. Hype, 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 hype. Hype that pipe. Pipe the hype. So yeah, be sure to check out. I think that was the only person who popped up that I know of who's, oh, obviously, please shout out Nor. I don't know why Nor was over my head, and I don't remember if I said hello Scarth, but hello Scarth. Scarth my heart. Level 4? What Nor? Thank you for the gift sub to Aeronix. I'm sure they'll like those sweet, sweet Obsidia emotes. Arise, brave knights. Yes, please shout out Nor, my favorite little kitty boy. I was there at his debut when he was a nervous little kitty, shaking in his boots, but he has grown up to be a strong, independent kitty who don't need no man. He's very funny. Definitely go check him out. Oh, thank you for the 1,000 bits, Mr. Samus, and thank you for the resub, Ethereal Koala. I'm glad you like me enough to keep resubbing after you found me in Horizon Zero Dawn. Hypsidia, Hypsidia. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Saki, thank you for the gift sub. Oh my god, a gift sub to Yulia, my favorite Royal Knight VT. I'm sure she'll love those sweet, sweet Obsidia emotes. Arise, also Knight. 2 more days till your anniversary. I saw, by the way, guys, extra reason to go check out Nor. He's doing his re-debut anniversary soon. I just wish our schedules aligned better. Ah, relatable, Mr. Samus, relatable. I'm sorry that they don't. This is just the times that work for me because I work. And then I'm old, so I don't like to stream late at night. Oh, thank you for the 131 bits, Cygnus. We're already done with level 4? What even is this world? This is a... Sir, this is a Wendy's. I really appreciate that, Mr. Samus. You love my personality and voice? I love to hear it. Hello, Fuzzball. Welcome, welcome. Level 5, hop, hop, hop. All right. So what is on the agenda for tonight? Well, first of all, gender is a social construct. Secondly, we're going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically, we are going to do a deep dive in discussing campaign design. As a dungeon master, and also just like using the example of a campaign that I'm just about finished with, like in running it, that Brainbuster is actually one of my players in Eberron. And so I'm going to explain some concepts. I'm going to use that campaign as demonstrations of some of it. Now, the main purpose of this is educational. Dojins and Dragons, well, that is a, somebody saw my hentai search history. Yeah, so purpose is to be educational. I disabled the voice redeems because they would take away from what I'm trying to explain here. And then, so if you have any questions about anything I'm talking about, please feel free to type it into chat. I will address it. And then what else am I saying? And if you're just interested and have questions in general as a dungeon master, like, I want to run this game, like, what are your thoughts on XYZ? Please feel free to let me know those as well. Good thing I didn't go to sleep early today, because I'm stuck in perma-DM role, and this will be useful. There shouldn't be any big spoilers, Cygnus. I mean, not Cygnus, Brainbuster. Because Because at the end of the day, you guys are in the very final part of it. So mostly what I'm talking about is real background lore or stuff you already know. So there shouldn't be any super spoilery things. Sensei, you have a question. What is your question, Fuzzball? As you ask your question, I am going to do Nor's Nia as the honorary kitty. So here we go. Paws are up, side to side. You know what that means. It's kitty time. Nia, Nia, Nia. There you go. And then Master Fail has redeemed a Big Death Knight hug. So get your hugging utensils ready, everyone, because I'm coming in deep. And a 3, and a 2, and a burr. There you go. A Big Death Knight hug from me to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And then what else was there? Oh, on the subject of Big Death Knight hugs, I have to address this. So, my friend who I had over my house was Aurelia, who I play D&D with on Saturdays. And, she, as she was leaving for the night, I was like, well, you know, would you like a hug for the road? And she's like, only if you do it the right way. And so she's like, my hugging utensils are ready. And I'm like, well, then I'm coming in deep. And a 3, and a 2, and a burr. And I grabbed her and I hugged her and I picked her off the ground and twirled her around. So I got to do my very first Big Death Knight hug in public. Well, not like in public, but in real life. Well, thank you for the lurk, Nor. I appreciate it. Ooh, Obsidia is at the beach art. Yeah, I love that beach art. It is so cute. I know. These IRL Big Death Knight hugs, just as good as you see on Twitch.tv. So, first of all, for Fuzzball's quick question, chromatic dragons are always the evil dragons because that's how D&D used to do it. There is a big caveat to this, of course, because in Eberron, no dragons are innately evil, because no race is innately evil in Eberron. So dragons are entirely whatever alignment they want to be. So that's the quick answer. Well, I know what we're going to do when we finally hang out. You're goddamn right, Brainbuster. Oh, thank you for the hype train, everybody. We made it to all the level 4 emotes. Hell yeah. Hype Citia. Hype Citia. Going on the choo-choo train to D&D land. Okay. Let's hop on over to a different part of the throne room. Ta-da! I'm going to turn on some B'Jem. I found this YouTube of medieval times Rose Zen Radio Bardcore covers. 5 hours of them. Hopefully there are no commercials. So we are I'm going to turn it up a little bit. This is just for Brainbuster. It's Land Down Under. Let me know if the music is too loud or too quiet. I can always turn it down. So here we are discussing Dungeons and Dragons, discussing campaign design. Yeah, if there are commercial breaks, I'll just find a different. I'll just do Seahorse as BGM. This isn't like a true presentation, Carpus. This is Clip Studio Paint, so it's more of like I'm gonna be using this for like note taking, just to bring up kind of like on the site PowerPoint points. So yeah, the open disclaimer is obviously, here's what I'm going to talk about at the start of this. So number one, I would say the top 2 most important things you need to know going into this that a lot of people forget about when they're playing role-playing games is that number 1, D&D / any tabletop role-playing game is you and your 4+ nerdiest friends having fun. The ultimate goal is to have fun with each other, and if you didn't like these people, you probably wouldn't be dedicating this amount of time to spending time with them. So always remember, the rule of fun overrules anything in a game. Like, your goal there should be to ensure that people enjoy their experience with your campaign. That doesn't mean you have to be like super nice or you have to pander to everything, but it does mean that you should always ensure that like mutual happiness in the storytelling experience is your goal. It's nobody wins at D&D. You win by everybody having fun and telling a good story. So, you know, there was a previous model of role-playing games where there was an adversarial relationship between the DM and the players themselves. But, oh my god, Paso Fluff! Good morning! How's everything over in Singapore? Thank you for the resub, 11 months running. Also, be sure to check out Paso Fluff's Discord bot, award-winning Gotchama, the VTuber gacha game robot. You can get such amazing VTubers such as Coco, or Nanners, or Obsidia. I understand, Paso. I'm always happy to see you here, and I always appreciate your continuing to resub me. I hope everything's been going well. Secondly, another important thing you need to remember about your campaign is that the setting designers, if you're using a pre-made setting, they will not come beat you up for making the world your own. Like, don't try to get too fixated on fitting the mold of the setting you are choosing to play in. Like, for instance, you want to be in Forgotten Realms, and you want to play, and you want somebody wants to play a Warforged, you know, artificer. Fucking do it. Like, who cares? You know, as these things have evolved, the D&D has made it so a lot of these elements are cross-setting. But like, you want to just wipe out the nation of Coromir from Forgotten Realms? You're allowed to. Nobody can stop you. I've stolen 12 countries from Forgotten Realms. The government can't stop you. So yeah, that's just an important thing to know, is the setting is there to give you suggestions, to lay down a framework from which you then use to tell your own stories. Now, when you have things like modules, like specifically things like, for example, Descent to Avernus, Curse of Strahd, and stuff like that, this rule is more flexible, because those things are kind of designed based on specific parameters. But at the end of the day, if you want to put in the work to adjust it, then just fucking do it. Like, nobody can tell you how to make your game, because as number one stated, the number one goal is fun. You know, that's the main goal of this. As long as people are enjoying the experience, then fuck it. You know, all the gods of Faerun are dead. Who cares? And then number 3, everything I'm going to be talking about tonight are my views on campaign design, you know, based on my experiences. I've been playing in and DMing RPG games for over 20 years at this point. Like, I've got a background of this, but a lot of the things I'm talking about here, I only realized within the last 10 years. So, you know, this is always a learning experience. And a lot of it is an effect of the group that you play with. Now, with all of that in mind, enjoy! Thank you for the lurk, Passel. I appreciate it. Okay, so here we go. Alright, so things you should know. Oh, and thank you for the lurk, Ethereal Koala. I appreciate it. Initial design parameters. So these are the some of the initial things you need to be considering when you're designing your game. Go get set up. Have a good stream. Well, thank you, Fuzzball. I hope you have a good stream too. Thank you for coming by. Okay, number 1. This is, I would say, the most important rule for campaign design. And that is ensure player buy-in. If I could like quadruple underline this, I would. This is the single most important thing you need to know when you are designing a campaign, just period. Oh, thank you for the shout out to Queen Space. Wicca wicca woo, space support for you. I'm happy you came. I thought your Wi-Fi was down, but I appreciate it. be sure to check out Space. She's a good bean, a good German VTuber, big brain, speedrunning games. Do not create a campaign. Do not run a campaign that your players do not want to play in. Ooh, you got a D&D line? I can't wait to see it, Space. So this is incredibly important. If your players want to be doing an investigation campaign, do not give them a hack and slash game. If your players want to play in an intrigue and romance game, do not give them a dungeon crawl campaign. You want, because at the end of the day, this is a cooperative experience and everybody needs to be having fun. And if you are forcing people to play in something they do not want to play in, then you are wasting both your time and theirs. So when you are undergoing the initial stages of campaign design for a game you're going to run, be sure that the people that you are going to run it for are actually stakeholders in the experience itself. And then I gotta read Space's line. I spoke to my parents and they allowed me, they allowed you to extend on your Wi-Fi. Here's the line, I hope it's good. Do you love hot summer nights? Because I'm killer at Dungeons and Dragons. I love it, Space, I love it. Ensure player buy-in, extract cash from players, got it. Well, that's a takeaway. But yeah, so that's the number one rule. You gotta make sure that you're running the experience that somebody wants to play. That doesn't mean you can't explore something as a personal creative exercise, as a thought experiment, etc. But at the end of the day, that's probably not the game you need to force people to play in if they don't want to play in it. Number 2. This is something that saving roles become microtransactions. Fucking EA Games designs a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Number 2. Linear is not a bad word. This is a very common misconception by a lot of people. People think a linear story, a linear campaign, they think railroading. That's not the case. Number 1, open world does not equal an enjoyable experience. It's not a default. So with that in mind, there are players who do not want the level of personal initiative that is required to truly enjoy an open world campaign. You have to have an incredible amount of drive as a player and a character to be able to properly explore an open world campaign. And a lot of people don't have that. That's just not the experience they want. Also, people that are really new to D&D can struggle with that because they don't know what's acceptable and what's not. Currently, I have run two very linear campaigns. One of which I ran over the course of about 3 years in Dark Heresy 2nd Edition, which is it's different than D&D. But I ran that for about 3 years, and it was a linear campaign. And what I mean by linear is that linear is basically there is a story you intend to tell, and there are beats along the way that should be reached to achieve that final result. So that's the difference between an open world where players are you present a world to the players and they explore it and experience it at their leisure. But remember, linear is also a great way to tell a story, and it's a great way to have a prepared story for the players to experience. And with that in mind, we will go and draw an arrow. Can't believe it's playing All-Star right now, by the way. So linear is not a bad word. And then in light of this, we need to know the second thing is no one thing should dictate the result. And what do I mean when I say this? Camera desynced. No. Okay, what do I mean when I say this? And what I mean is that there's a perfect example about Fallout New Vegas versus Fallout 4. So, New Vegas, you can kill every single NPC in Fallout New Vegas and still complete the storyline. There is no one NPC that acts as a gatekeeper for the rest of the content. You might get a less fulfilling gameplay experience if you kill everybody, but you still have that freedom. And Fallout 4, there are specific story NPCs you cannot kill. And they have that theirs because the story doesn't progress. There's also a specific NPC that you need as a lead for information, and if you kill that person, the game gives you nothing. You have to basically wander the wasteland until you stumble onto the main plot again. So, if you are doing a linear story, never have any single person, any single thing, any single role that has to be achieved in order to progress the plot. I have seen so many horror stories of inexperienced GMs who had a situation where a player, players can sometimes be assholes, and they killed somebody they shouldn't have killed. A, that's a failing on you by the DM because you allowed them to kill something that you needed in order to be able to tell your story. And then they become paralyzed because they don't know how to redirect the plotline now, because they're like, you needed that person to be able to do X, Y, or Z. Without that person, you have nothing. And that is a huge problem for any stream. I mean, not for any stream, for any game. And that's why the New Vegas philosophy is what you should go for. If there is an NPC that you need that has information to progress the plot, there should be alternative ways that the players can learn that info. Did they keep logs? Did they talk about it with somebody else? Is there something on their person? Etc. These are things that you can use so that your campaign is not derailed by the actions of a single player or single decision or single die roll. So that's, I would say, number 2 is the second most important rule of playing campaign. I'm just going to look at some of the comments. In your experience, open world campaigns can be great with a skilled DM and driven players. On the other hand, it can easily become a snooze fest if those elements are missing. The most amazing campaign I played in was mostly linear. Yes. I entirely agree with that, Alistair Nia. Good old Morrowind. With this character's death, the thread of prophecy is severed. Restore a save game to restore the weave of fate. Yeah. Just lurking and drinking, not much to say about D&D. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Samus. I really do. So, there you go. So that's what I would say is also important to know. For example, the campaign that I'm currently running in Eberron that Brainbuster is playing in. The campaign is called Shadows of the Last War. And I wrote out the concept of this campaign ahead of time. And kind of the story I wanted it to tell. Like, I created a first adventure and I created a final concept. And everything along the way was to lead towards those paths. Hello, JC. Welcome, welcome. And Cutie Pie, how are you? I'm doing good. I'm talking about D&D. You love to see it. Turn that down a bit. For example, like, I'm going to now write up some of the things. Like, you're allowed to take ideas from everything you do. Usually, every campaign I write is shaped by some anime or video game I was playing around the time that I was writing. Hello, Anna Chris Cookbook. Brainbuster, can you please shout out the NY Snark Exchange? Chris is also one of my players in my Eberron campaign. So, and then the use all resources to tell the story you want. Hello, Naira the Gardevoir. Welcome, welcome. I'm in this. So, for example, I am running an Eberron game. Let's go here. Eberron. Eberron is, for those of you who don't know, Eberron is Arcanopunk fantasy. And what is Arcanopunk fantasy? Arcanopunk fantasy is basically like pseudo steampunk, except they use magic instead of technology. So, also, could we please have a shout out for Underbred Umbra? I don't know why your badge is glitching out for me, but everybody's favorite under the bed monster. Welcome, welcome, Willow. So, Eberron is Arcanopunk fantasy. It's not quite like Arcanum. Arcanum is closer to steampunk. Arcanopunk fantasy, which then also means magic instead of tech. So, example, magic trains, spells for calling, etc. So that's some examples of stuff they do in Eberron. Like, everything is justified by magic. So normally some of the gaps that that anything would have in a world that technology would do are instead done by some kind of magical source. Why Steam when magic work? Exactly, tape player, exactly. Also, hello. Welcome, welcome. I saw you followed me off stream. I appreciate it. So I really leaned into this setting to tell the story I wanted to tell. And the basic concept I wanted was magic, WMD, and war criminals. That was my total campaign objective, was to set a campaign where there was a magical weapon of mass destruction and the bad guys were war criminals who were this is where, anime influences everything, modeled off of the Phantom Troop from Hunter x Hunter. So that's what I modeled it off of. I was like, how can I do this for a setting? Objective completed. Yeah, so the bad guys in it are a group of war criminals who are basically trying to get control of a magical WMD so they can basically right the wrongs of what they feel happened to their fallen country. That's basically the whole campaign premise. And so it was a matter of trying to figure out how to then bring that to life. So a part of that is, we're going to call this now 4. Find, we'll go antagonist, objective, and work backwards. What I mean by use all resources to tell the story you want is, like when you have a campaign, you can use any aspect of media in your life and stuff to get inspiration, and you also can use the things of the setting itself. If you're using a pre-made, for instance, like Eberron, where magic is replaced technology, you use that concept and the things that opens up to you to be able to write the story you want. Is there a magical WMD in Eberron? No. That is not actually something that is canonically stated in Eberron, in any of the Eberron books I've read. However, this concept of magical WMD in Eberron apparently is something that every Eberron DM arrives upon. Because I've talked to 2 different Eberron DMs and they both said they had a magical WMD. So it's like everybody comes to the same conclusion, apparently. So yeah, when you're trying to figure out your storyline, 4 settings should have canonical magical WMDs, don't at me. When you're trying to figure out your story, the easiest way to figure out the component parts that you need to tell is if you have a main antagonist, either a single person, a group of people, or an organization of them, what is it that they want to achieve? And you then see how they would go about achieving that, and then just work backwards from there till you get to the start. Eagle tries to use weapon but plot twist, my dear players, turns out the weapon was Senator Armstrong. Because nanomachine, son. But yeah, so for instance, my bad guy's goal is to get the magical WMD activated. So the entire campaign is how do they go about getting that activated? Once you've done that, you figure out the component parts. Are they trying to end wars and economy? You try and figure out the component parts, and that gives you pre-made adventures, basically, as the players try to stop the antagonists achieving their objective. Everything is about conflict. Somebody should be trying to achieve something, and the players should be trying to stop that. Or the players should be trying to achieve something, and the bad guy should be trying to stop that. That is the basic core of it. So when you've analyzed your antagonist's motivations and objectives and worked backwards, you now have an understanding about how to fill in the gaps over the course of the campaign. And so I'm going to go to... We're going to delete my Eberron spiel for a second. So there you go. So now that you have that, remember... Stories can be episodic, which I will explain in a second, and can/should contain mini arcs. Shoot, it was a little bit too long. We'll go contain mini arcs. I realize you're just like me rolling a d20. So what do I mean by stories can be episodic and can and should contain mini arcs? My Eberron campaign is broken down into, let me see, how many is it? 15 quests. There were 15 quests that make up the entirety of the campaign. Out of those 15 quests, there are numerous instances of 3 quest adventure arcs. What is an adventure arc? Arcs equal a, I would say, related storylines. So, for instance, I have a 3-adventure arc in my campaign that involves the Fae. Step 1 of the arc. For example, Fae arc. Adventure 1, we'll call this Adv 1. Wild Hunt attacks train. Players are guarding. That was the first adventure out of the Fae arc. The players were guarding a train that people were disappearing from. And while they were guarding it, it became attacked by Fae of the Wild Hunt, who, because of in-universe reasons, needed to get people to turn them into hounds in order to be able to fight off some bad guys. I will answer that in a sec, tape player, once I've explained the rest of this concept. So, the entire adventure was them basically scattered throughout a train, fighting for their lives against these Fae, and at the end of the day, they killed the head Fae boss, the Houndmaster, which had later repercussions. But, so they killed the Houndmaster, and that was the end of the adventure, was they succeeded in figuring out what was causing the problems, and they stopped it. Adventure 2 was, oh my god, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Fae recruit party, because without Hound Master, planar threat occurs. So now, as a direct result of the player's actions at a later point in the campaign, the Fae approach the party to recruit them to help out the Fae, because they explained that the Wild Hunt has a purpose that basically protects the mortal world from nightmare creatures. And because the players killed the Hound Master, that the Wild Hunt isn't able to do its job. And because it hasn't been doing its job, the nightmare creatures have been basically invading the Fey Wilds and will then invade the material plane after that. So the players need to basically fix the problem that they started. So they then get hired, they go into the Fey Wilds, they go into the Plane of Dreams, and they reactivate the Wild Hunt. Aware of the fact of the Wild Hunt is problematic, but it's one of those things, it might be problematic, but it's for the good of the planet, basically. So they do this. And that's the end of that arc. I mean, that's the end of that adventure. And then Adventure 3... they need Fae help for our final battle. I'll shrink this in a second. Here we go. So, as the third result of this, they were then at a later point, when they were gearing up to fight the big bad guys, they got an IOU from the Fae as a result of their second adventure, and they decided to cash that in to be able to get the Wild Hunt and the Fae to help them out in the final battle against the bad guys. Now, this also came with another adventure, because then the Fae decided to fuck with the party and basically made them play a dating sim, with the stakes being, if they didn't succeed, that they would kill all their friends. But that is a start to finish, that is a continuous storyline that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That is a mini arc as a part of the overall campaign, which I would call a meta arc. Overall campaign equal meta arc. So your meta arc can be subdivided into several mini arcs, which can give basically mini stories along the way. So when you plan these adventures, do you simply plan the problem to be solved and leave it open-ended, or plan X number of solutions? Usually, I design these adventures. This will be at another point I'll talk about next, but I generally see that people generally like to do a lot of RPG. I mean, they do a lot of role-playing, and they want to fight something each adventure. They want to do at least one fight. So I usually set things up as there is an investigative / role-playing aspect, and then it culminates in a battle against some bad guys. There are potentially different ways to resolve it, and I try to make it adaptable as such. However, generally players take the path of least resistance when it comes to some of these situations. But I'll give an example of an adventure where I created a problem and then a final result, and it was up to the players to basically figure out how they arrived to it. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the stream. I will do your redeem in a second. Does anybody else have any questions about anything I just talked about in these 5 points? And then while I'm waiting for those questions, I will do Ryan's redeem. Oh, Ryan, I know how much you enjoy doing this. You do it literally every stream since I've enabled it. So I just want you to say, I just want you to know, I'm just saying what we've all been thinking. Is that you, Ryan? Yes, you. You are my little PogChamp, and there's nothing that can change that. How do you guide the party of cats into the objective without being too forced or railroady? That is a very good question, Carpus. We will start another thing. We're going to move from just our initial design parameters to player investment. Player investment. Players do not care. Players do not care about your hard work. Unless they are invested. It's the easiest way to explain this. You could design the greatest world, the best NPCs, but if the players themselves don't have enough personal stake in those results or those NPCs, they're not going to care. You're not going to hit the beats that you want. So, you know, every DM puts a lot of work into designing their world, designing their adventures, designing their NPCs. However, at the end of the day, if the players don't understand like what's going on and the importance of the NPCs, or the NPCs aren't liked by the players, that they don't give a fuck about what happens to them. So, one of the ways I do this is no NPC was loved in a day. No NPC was loved in a day. What does that mean? That means if you actually want your NPC, or your bad guy, for instance, to have a meaningful impact on the players, you have to give them more than one-off exposure to them. So, for example, I have 4 NPC companions for the party that they recruited over the course of the campaign. These NPCs were all recruited, and then they stay with the party as a part of the party going forward. And then the players can then choose which one of the 4 NPCs they want to bring with them on a given adventure that they do. Lever safety. Oh, I appreciate it, Michael. So, as a part of that, you know, they will have an initial reaction to these NPCs in one shape or another. And that always has some level of impact, and they'll, like, appreciate the NPC for what they are. But the key is they then have continual exposure to that NPC going forward. What, you know, the NPC they bring on a given quest will have interactions with the players. And then an important thing I do is I do player interludes. So my campaign is linear. There are, you know, these 15 adventures. In between each quest, the players have a 2-week break in time, of which they can do basically whatever they want. It's just a time for them to RP, to go do like things that may be personally important to them, such as talking to certain NPCs, exploring their stories, having a spa day, for instance. That was one of the options that Chris's Warlock did with the Artificer NPC companion in the party. They literally had a spa day. And it was a lot of fun, and it gives a chance for the NPCs to become more humanized for the players, and for them to become more invested in these NPCs' lives and their personal stories. Also, that is not just for NPC companions, but also for 2 weeks in game, not IRL. Yeah, usually the interlude adventures is like it's a 1 session thing of them each doing their own little thing. I had to hydrate. So yeah, you build the NPC up over time. There's also quest givers and stuff that they meet over several adventures. Like Kate Sith. You know, Kate Sith is a great example. Kate Sith is the Fae Knight of the Raven Queen, the Prince of Cats. In one of the early adventures, the party meets him in the form of a fluffy, silly flying kitty. Like a Tessimir from Forgotten Realms. And what does he do? He is just an intelligent cat. That's basically mostly what the players learned about him, is that he's a cat who clearly knows something, even though he just meows and stuff. Along the way, he is gradually like spending more time with the party and learning about them and encouraging one of the party members who had become the new user of the Houndmaster's sword to be a little more inclined to use it going forward. Eventually, when they got their job from the Fae, it was revealed that Cait Sith had actually been basically spying on them and relaying them to the Fae, and that Cait Sith was going to be their spirit guide while they were in the Fae Wilds, to take them to the places they need to go. After they did that, they talked to Cait Sith. He stole parts of their souls in order to help them, and then they returned back to the mortal world, and he went back to his kitty form and was an adorable little cat. And however, at that point, the players knew he was he was a Fae Knight, and so they had a very different view about him going forward, and a very reluctant acceptance of him. And then he made further appearances in several interludes and future adventures up until one of the players flipped out and kicked him out of the party. Hello, Vetricale. Welcome. Yeah. Cait Sith, otherwise known as Ikashi, if you're doing it in Gaelic, is Ikashi. I knew the cat was sus. Reluctant acceptance. But Cait Sith is a quest giver. He's been a companion of the party and stuff. Not in an adventurous sense, but just literally a cat that traveled around with the party and went up to hijinks. And that made more importance as he continued in the story. Also, with the NPC not being built in a day, the interludes are of vital importance to let the NPCs spread their wings and let the party be able to understand them better. For example, I have an NPC, which you all will know of, because I do her voice frequently under the Airhead Redeem. This is a campaign I'm currently running, Saki, which is, for example, Larissa Stormtalon. Larissa Stormtalon is a ridiculous character, who I love with every fiber of my being. And the basic premise for her was she is a harpy bard. And I wanted to make a bard that was basically Poppy from Monster Musume. It was like, what if this harpy was a bard and traveled with the party? So, yes, everybody loves Larissa. Larissa is a very beloved character in the party. So, they first met her in the very first adventure. Met in first adventure as an NPC. She was an NPC they had to rescue from a monster trafficking ring, basically. Now, as a result of them rescuing her, they kind of got this feeling that she was really goofy and ditzy, because he's like, oh my god, like, I'm like, totally, like, thank you for saving me. I really appreciate it. Those guys were like, kind of dicks. And then she just kind of did her own thing. And the players were like, well, she's silly, but oh well. So in a future adventure, 4 adventures later, 4 Advi later, they met Larissa as a adventurer. Or as an adventurer, sorry. So they met her as an adventurer, who had been inspired by them rescuing her in the first mission, and she basically took her takeaway from being trafficked was, I don't want this to happen to me again. I'm going to try and become stronger and become a strong, independent harpy who don't need no man. So she joined them. She told funny stories about what she'd been doing in the months months following when they rescued her, and then she joined their party at the end of that. Now, Larissa shined most out of combat, where Larissa would, one of the things that she did that earned her an immediate place in people's memories was Larissa's Girls' Night, or it's Girls' Night Makeover. Larissa had a girls' night with the other female characters in the party, where she did a makeover, where she was just a catty bitch to everybody. But she means well. She just basically doesn't understand that, like, she's being a kind of a dick when she talks. And so I had her be ridiculous, like, she's a harpy, so she's used to, like, preening her wings with her teeth and stuff. So when she's doing the makeover, she's, like, trying to chew off part of the skin on some of the female characters. She's talking about how their hairdos don't look hot enough. She, like, did some talon-based acupuncture to one of the characters to get rid of the bags under her eyes. Stuff like this. And it was just like, everybody remembered that about Larissa. And they knew she was this really goofy, like, friendly party animal. And so in future adventures, she's always, like, she drinks heavily, partially because I model her after a woo girl. So she goes like, woo! Let's get fucking wasted, bitches! And part of that is because she metabolizes it to basically vomit it as a substance to strengthen her nest that she built. But yeah, so people remember Larissa's Girls' Night makeover. They remember the fact that she's doofus, that she means well, she's very silly, she's very ditzy. But yeah, so Larissa, from the time they first met her in the first adventure to now in like the 13th adventure, she has grown as a character and has grown in the attachments that the players have for her. So that's an example of somebody that you should keep in mind, like, for how is a way to create player attachment and investment in the NPCs you make for them. Also, hello, Creeping Vine Tea, welcome. What if you were an NPC? Hopefully you'd be a cute one. Hi, Obsidian, I survived land now. I'm gonna go collapse now. Well, thank you for coming by, Carlo. I really appreciate it. Enjoy your snooze. So that is an example, is you build the NPC over the course of several adventures, several just chances to roleplay. The most success you will have in storytelling and keeping players invested is the role-playing section. Is sometimes when there isn't fighting, it's just you and various NPCs talking to the players as they do various things. Grabbing some of the... Okay, well, thank you, Brainbuster. I appreciate it. So that's a big thing, is keeping that investment going forward. Like, another great example was in the second adventure with the Wild Hunt. One of the very plot-necessary NPC companions that they recruited was this artificer, and I'll just do this. I'm glad you're giving me this while I'm explaining things. It'll help me explain everything in these trying times to have a faithful paladin by my side. There's Astolfo. She got recruited by the party as her father was killed in front of her. During that adventure, no less. And so she joined the party for vengeance against the people who killed her father. Now, she was very traumatized by this experience. And by Adventure 5, when they had a chance to just roleplay with each other, as another NPC was asking them basically for their life stories, that NPC had a total emotional breakdown in front of the party, where she was crying, where she basically said, you know, in an ideal world, she would have never met the party. Her father would still be alive, she'd be helping Warforged like she always wanted to, and she would have never met the party. And every day that she's here is you know, a constant reminder of everything she's lost. And, you know, she's like, I love you all very dearly, but I would be better off in this world if I had never met any of you. Because that means that this stuff hadn't happened. And that really struck a chord with the party. They really began to, you know, their hearts, you know, kind of bled for her because they knew the pain that she was in. So that's one of my examples about NPC. No NPC was loved in a day. And then there were some questions about how do I guide the party? The easiest way to guide the party is their choices should always eventually lead them where they need to go. So I was in the wrong screen. Sorry about that. I'll say player choice should always be progress. So, this is a bit of DM cheating. You know, there was a meme I saw like months ago where it was a picture of a guy standing in a fork in a road. And the forks then linked up again afterwards. And it was the town I just described for the players to go to, or the town the players end up deciding to go to, and both sides lead to the same town. But without knowing more information, like, you know, it's a pleasant surprise for the players because they think they had the illusion of choice. But the main point about that is, if the players are doing something to progress the story, to progress the investigation, to progress the plot, etc., it should always be leading to results. And so, important thing to keep into consideration with that is a good old DM trick. Goddamn right. Going with what I previously said about how no one thing should be the, you know, deciding or not of a given campaign, you know, there should always be a way for the players to find some critical information that you think is necessary to progress the story. Say, for instance, the players in Adventure were supposed to go meet up with a contact to go explain like where the bad guy is hiding out. And the players say, fuck that. We're gonna go research this on their own. And so they decide to go out into the wilderness and try and track down the bad guy on their own. You best believe you make a way for them to track the fucking bad guy to the place that you want to take them. That's what I'm trying to say here. That's how you guide them along. Is one of the things is, like, you create results that are available to them no matter what they pick that will help lead them to the final point. When you have reached a stalemate, like where the players, or reached a dead end, where the players feel like they have nowhere to go or no idea what to do next, that is a time where somebody needs to talk to them. Like, there needs to be an NPC that reaches out to them. They need to be doing something else and stumble across something that they need. But it keeps the pace going, is to always have something available. Never imagine your campaign as something the players need to be able to find. Especially, this is, I would say, the single biggest thing is, do not make a die result what determines the progress of the story. Do not make the players have to succeed on a given check. Especially don't make the players have to succeed on a check for a skill that you know none of them have. Like, that is the biggest pet peeve. Like, you designed the story for this party. Do not make them deal with a situation that they are not prepared to deal with. And yes, Scarth, to quote Benny from Fallout New Vegas, the truth is, it was rigged from the start. So that's one of the ways you can keep it going without making it seem railroady, is not telling them you have to do X, it's making X the result of no matter what they do. If you know what I'm saying. And I feel like that isn't, I don't feel like that's unjust to the players, you know, because I don't feel like you're, I don't feel like you're denying them anything by that.
The game was rigged from the start.
Not here. So yeah, and then going with the previous question about creating one problem with solution. For example, the very first adventure I ran for this campaign, which in my opinion is my best adventure out of the whole campaign, is they get hired to go investigate the disappearance of several monstrous children in this town. And so they have a timeline. Like, there is a time pressure. Trauma equals progress. So there was a time pressure that they had to find these children by a certain time or shit was gonna go down. And so they were given a dossier of previous places where all the children had been taken, and some of the basically investigative reports about those scenes. And so they arrive at the area, and then the question is, well, how do you go about finding new information? And so I give them time that they can explore the area, and depending on what the players choose to do in that area, I have example clues that they can learn to drive them to where the children are located. So it's entirely based on how the players go about doing the investigation, but you should always have what the players are doing to find out the information. That should lead to something. It should never be just a flat-out waste of time. And if it is going to be a waste of time, just tell them. Like, nobody's going to get much enjoyment about you being like, aha, we just wasted 40 minutes of our lives by you doing this. But yeah, so that's the thing, is you create stuff like that so that no matter what they do, they're going to eventually find out where you want them to go. Make that unprepared check for a potential alternate route. Yeah, like, there are examples, like, for instance, if you have a situation where you expect the players to kill X NPC, and instead of killing that NPC, they take him hostage. Well, that changed the result a bit, so you just adapt the story based on this information. But like I previously said, no one NPC determines the whole story. Yeah. I've been gaming long enough that I don't like to tell people what they're doing something that's going to be wasting their time. Like, if you are not in a situation where there is the potential that a perception check will learn something, I'm not going to make you do a perception check. Like, and I'm not, because that's just a waste of everyone's time. Okay. Another thing. This is a classic. This is writing 101. Show, don't tell. This is, I would say this is most important in antagonists. I am a huge proponent of showing, not telling for an antagonist. Children's puzzles for RPG night. Yep. I am bad at puzzles, so I 100% appreciate that. This is most important for antagonists. For example, I'm not going to do the example first. Demonstrate your antagonist is a threat long before the players are supposed to fight him. Like, I think that's very important. Don't let the players know that, oh man, this Dark Lord is quite a badass. Everybody's talking about how much of a badass he is. How much are you? You're truly wise, and I agree with everything you said. Thank you, Mr. True 2 Electric Boogaloo. I appreciate it. They need to see firsthand the threat that the enemy poses. They need to see firsthand, and the best way to do this is have the bad guy demonstrate his power in front of the players in a way that is not a threat to the players directly. What do I mean by that? So, you never want to create a situation, where your big bad evil guy can kill the party, or the party can kill him before they're ready. So, this is one of the most important things, because a fundamental error people will make is, oh man, I want to show how badass my Lich is. And so I'm going to have my Lich show up to this group of level 3 party members, and they're going to have a chance to fight him, and he is going to do, an attack. Now that's going to... It just fucking kills one of the players. You don't want to do that. Because that is, that's rigged from the start in a very bad way. You're the DM here. You have ultimate control over everything happening in the campaign. So if you create a situation where you're sending an incredibly overpowered thing against your players directly just to demonstrate how scary they are, and you kill them, you fucked up. You made a fundamental problem there. Because that was not your purpose, so why did you do it that way? The best way to then do it is to have them demonstrate their power against someone else. For example, in my Eberron campaign, the big bad guys are a group of war criminals known as the Ashbringers. There are 7 Ashbringers. Each of them is a different, class and personality and stuff. In the very first adventure, they meet one of the Ashbringers. They meet the Evoker. And she is a basically insane kitsune wizard. True battlecaster. And when they see her for the first time, she doesn't give a fuck about the party. She's literally just having a drink. And the players made some skill rolls, and they figured out who she was the moment they saw her. At that point, I told them, yeah, she's an Ashbringer. These people are incredibly wanted war criminals. They've supposedly killed tens of thousands of people during the war. There's a bounty on each of their heads of 10,000 gold each, dead or alive. And they've been rumored to have been killed many times in the past, but always seem to come back up. So the players knew this was a bad bitch not to fuck with. However, the players still went to go talk to her. And she was adversarial. She wasn't pleased to talk to them, but she did talk. And then she eventually intimidated them to the point of they backed away. Now, when they found the root of the human trafficking ring in the city, it involved a big battle against these religious cultists. And one of the people that was captured as a part of this trafficking ring was the Ashbringer. Her name was the Harlequin. That was her code name. So she had allowed herself to get captured. And because she found it so entertaining that these people didn't know who she was. And another important role that she served was she is not there against the players. And since this was a potentially big fight, I left her there so that if the fight turned too heavily against the party, she could intervene to protect them by killing the bad guys as well. Now, she doesn't care about the players, but she really doesn't like the bad guys at that point. So, they fight the bad guys. There comes a point when the bad guys hold all the children hostage with knives to their throat as the players approach them, and they're basically saying, Larissa MVP. Hey Schmendrick, welcome. Schmendrick is also one of my players in my Eberron campaign. So when they're holding these people hostage, the bad guys are basically trying to negotiate their escape. Because they're like, we're totally fucked here. Let us go. In exchange, we'll let you have the kids. And so, as a part of this, Harlequin had intervened earlier in the battle because the party was doing very shitty in this combat. So she showed up and was chucking some fireballs around and just murdering these CR1 creatures. And so the players could see how powerful she was, and also that she had the power to make it so that certain people wouldn't be affected by her abilities. But the important thing was they saw how much destruction she could do compared to them at that point. And so when they eventually negotiated the release of the kids, basically the bad guys took one of the players hostage, and then when they took the player hostage, Harlequin then activated her spells that made it so she didn't target certain people and just fried the bad guys with a chain lightning and a cloud kill. And so the players were made abundantly clear, or were made abundantly aware of how powerful the Harlequin was. And even though she wasn't doing anything against the party, in fact, she was helping the party, this sowed a seed for future in the campaign. Because she was one day going to make a reappearance, and at that point they knew, oh fuck, she is powerful. we cannot fight her 1v1. She will kill us. Which was great because there was a future adventure that involved the players having to flee away from the Ashbringers while shit was going down. So, option 2. There was another one of these Ashbringers in the second adventure. While they're on the train that the Wild Hunt is attacking. While they're attacking this train, one of the Ashbringers is on the train as well to try and capture the soul of their artificer companion that they will make after this point. Her father, because they need him to further their plots future on in the campaign. Like I told you, you find out the end goal of your bad guys and you work your way backwards. So this was one of the steps they needed to achieve. And while they're fighting for their lives against the Fae, they see the second Ashbringer, the Revenant, who is this elf barbarian, using a double-sided scimitar, basically just casually striding through a train car, massacring the Fae that are trying to attack people and attack them. And they just take wounds and instantly regenerate them and just keep on carving their way through. And at this point, the players are like, oh fuck. They're also carving their way through normal people. This is a bad person. And all the Ashbringers have a very distinctive tattoo to indicate them. So the players knew, oh fuck, this person's powerful. The Harlequin was powerful. This is probably not somebody we want to fuck with. And so she ended up achieving her goal of getting the guy's soul, and then she left. And that just gave further credence that, oh man, this is a powerful person that we shouldn't mess with. She wasn't doing anything against the party. I think she did one attack just to like demonstrate that the party should not be attacking her right now. But I cheat all my rolls if I think that I'm being overly punitive. I always cheat to help my party. So that's what I mean by show don't tell for antagonists and stuff. Demonstrate their power, demonstrate the threat they have, give you an experience of like what the players are going to be dealing with later on, so that when they finally confront these things, it has more impact. It has more sway. Whew! Anybody have any questions about what I've been talking about so far? I realize I've just spent a lot of time talking continuously. What was the other big point? Oh, yeah. So we're gonna go. If nobody has any other questions about these player investment points, we're gonna talk about tools and cheat codes. I'm just trying to absorb as much as you can. I appreciate it, Umbra. And I said at the start of the stream, if people have any questions about, just D&D, DMing in general, and story design, please feel free to ask them in chat. I'll try and get to all of them. The purpose of this is to be educational, imparting my wisdom. So we're going to start a new page talking about tips and tricks of storytelling. Obsidia the Wise. Teacher Obsidia. Alright, so we've talked about some of the ways you get your players invested. We talked about some of the things you need to know when you're designing your campaign as a whole. Especially using a linear campaign that I have used as an example with my Eberron campaign, Echoes of the Last War. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the tips and tricks of using those. Number 1 is give the players a house. This is like a very simple thing. House / I'll make it more specific. Base of operations. So, what do I mean by this? In my opinion, it's important that the players have something that they can call their own. like a specific location, because that gives more, no pun intended, a more grounding to the players in the world itself. They're not just a wandering band of murder hobos. They are people who, they have a place that they live. They have a place that they can renovate. Houses are like pets to a player. You will be amazed at how much time players will spend basically doing The Sims in D&D. They'll decorate their house, they'll improve their house, they'll talk about their house. It's the same thing with pets. If you put in a cute animal for a player that they can adopt, they 100% will. It'll become the most beloved thing they've ever met in their lives, and they will cherish it every moment that they have it. So the main thing that this does is it gives them grounding, especially when you've got a location I'll say a location of interest that keeps them invested in the world. Like, for instance, my Eberron campaign, at the end of the first adventure, they were given a house in the city of Greywall, which is this monster city, and that gave them a personal stake in the city's existence. And it made it so that they felt like a part of the community in a lot of ways. There were NPCs that they would repeatedly see and interact with because they lived in the same area. They lived in the same city. And so even though a lot of the time, actually almost every time, the players left their base of operations to go do their quests, they always had a place that they could call home and come back to. And that was very important to them. One of the big bad's giant spiders. Yeah, players just love pets. Yeah, that's another easy cheat code. Is give people pets. They will care about those pets more than literally any NPC you could ever write in a campaign. But yeah, so that's why having a house that they can call their own matters. Number 2 is, here's a real easy one. This is something I talked about in my previous world building stream. Racism equals bad. I do not like racism in D&D. I've never liked it. It creates this idea that you basically have a dehumanizing open license to murder people because of the way they look. And that's really fucked up to me. So I talked about that in my previous world building, and it's the same thing here. Racism is bad. I don't like racism to be a factor, and when racism is a factor, it is always being used by bad guys. The bad people are the racists. So that's a handy-dandy trick, is to break down the barriers of race within the party and within the world around them. And the people who do use race, they're probably assholes. And this is another good thing, is points of contact. Points of contact. So, for example, here's a bit of world building explanation of how I use the Eberron setting. Every adventure should have a hawk. Hello, Vondanolo, my master of wiggles. Welcome, welcome. Bone free and happy to be here. In Eberron, there are things called the dragon-marked houses. The dragon-marked houses are essentially these massive, magical, noble houses that run all aspects of industry and the economy in one way, shape, or form. They're very powerful. So I used that to basically make the core concept behind my setting was that they're fantasy mega corporations like you'd see in a cyberpunk game. We're gonna burn down this city, samurai. And so the players are not actually traveling like normal adventurers. The players are, in fact, they're called contract adventurers. What is a contract adventurer? A contract adventurer is basically a team of adventurers who get employment by the dragon-marked houses to accomplish very specific tasks for them. These tasks are basically quests. And when they are getting offered a quest, they receive a point of contact about the quest. They receive the location the quest will take place in. They will receive what their quest objectives are, and how much they will get paid to achieve these objectives. This is a huge thing for me, is giving set amounts of money that players get paid for doing stuff, because it eliminates the inherent desire of every adventurer to become a loot goblin, where you have to amass all of your belongings so that you can eventually resell them to do whatever. No, I just simplified for you. Rather than telling you all the pieces of armor, all the weapons that you can resell to gain amount of money, I'll just tell you, you're going to get paid 500 gold to do this job. 500 gold each. There you go. And it makes it so that the players can be... Actually, I'm going to switch point of contact to 4. 3. Set payment for quests reduces loot goblin. And so, yeah, it's basically, I eliminate the middleman for you. It keeps them more directed to achieving the goals of the adventure itself. You know, if they have to rescue somebody who's being attacked by bad guys, they're more likely to rescue that person quickly if they don't sit there and loot every person afterwards. So that's something simple. Tips and tricks. Another thing is milestones equal reduce urge to kill. So I use milestone experience in my campaigns. I don't like XP tallying. I've never liked XP tallying. It also creates an inherent desire to kill everyone so that you can get their delicious, delicious experience points. So by using milestone, you basically divorce the murder experience from reduce urge to kill. Taking notes. It basically reduces that desire, and it lets them have a higher desire to take people captive, to interrogate people, to just not kill people and let people run away, etc. So that's a good way to reduce that. Point of contact. Every adventurer should have somebody that the players can talk to. If anything, this will give somebody that when the players are absolutely stumped, they have somebody that, in theory, should know what's going on. This could be their quest giver, it could be somebody they meet along the way, etc. Here we go for NPCs. Enemies becoming friends. Good. Friends becoming enemies. Becoming friends. Equal better. So, what do I mean by this? I don't mean like literally befriend somebody, they go against you, etc. I mean, if you have a bad guy that you want to become an ally of the party, don't have their first interaction with that bad guy be fighting him. They will have a higher desire to kill him off if that's their first interaction with them. Rather, give them an opportunity to meet the bad guy before a fight, independently of a fight, and talk to him. He's not, you know, he might be bad guy, but he doesn't mean he's bad guy. Take the bad guy to a date, exactly. So, for example, hey Bassie, welcome, welcome. Happy to have you. I don't think Brainbuster is here, so I'm going to give a shout out to Jazzy Bassie, the Bardista themselves. They also do a lot of tabletop role-playing streams and design stuff and music and Magic the Gathering. Be sure to check them out. They're one of my playtesters for one of the campaigns I'm working on that we did our world-building stuff for, so they're a good bean. Get at least third base with the bad guy, you're goddamn right. Yeah, so what do I mean by that? So I had an adventure where the players got involved in something called Arcane Arena. And Arcane Arena was a magical battle in Sharn, which is the city, where basically teams of adventurers or just people would compete fighting magical monsters and stuff and each other for prizes and cash. Now, as they were progressing through this, their goal of entering this was because they were hired by one criminal organization basically saying, we need your help because this is being rigged by another criminal organization who's like real bad. And so, because of that, they did 2 rounds of competing, and while they were competing, they found out the 3rd round, they were going to compete against this guy and his team known as Kai Shen Zhao, the Black Lotus of Shard. And he was a hobgoblin samurai, basically. And so they hear about how much of a badass he is, and how he is supposed to be, like, set up for winning the tournament and progressing to basically like the NFL of Arcane Arena. Yeah, Bassie, I'm gonna get to the thing about designing bad guy or boss encounters later. But yes, that is a note about boss encounters that will be addressed. And so they have this thing of like, oh, this guy's a real badass. And so before the fight, like the night before, they get invited to have dinner with him by him. And he's just a cool dude. He invites them to dinner. They drink sake. You know, he talks about how they're all going to die tomorrow, and he feels really bad about that. And that he has to do this because he has a geas on him. He can't explain that he has a geas, but the party picks up on the fact that he has a geas. And he's being compelled by the rival criminal organization to basically compete in these matches against his will. And so they now know this before they fight him, that he doesn't want to kill them. He doesn't want to fight him. He is a badass, and he will fight them. But if they want to help this guy, who seems like he's a good dude in a bad situation, they're gonna need to break that free. So during the battle in the arena itself, they notice that he has basically something that doesn't look consistent with the rest of his gear. It is basically a symbol of the rival criminal organization. And so while he's fighting the party, and mind you, he's kicking the party's ass in a lot of ways, because I know how to play a battle master with a polearm. And so he and his minions are kicking the party's ass, and then they notice that he's got this item. And they do like a detect magic thing and determine that that's probably the focus point for what is doing the geas. So they then cast, I think it was a magic missile, and detonate the item. At that point, he helped the party fight the rest of the bad guys, and then conceded at the end of the match, basically saying, yeah, I was bested, these guys were much better than me. And at that point, he basically, offered his life to the party and said, like, I fucked up, and so it is your right to take my life if you want. Obviously, the players refuse because they're not assholes. And so he then pledges himself to basically serve the party. And so they then recruited their NPC that way. And then he has been a great cornerstone of the NPC companions ever since. He's the no-nonsense, like, wise veteran kind of dude. So that's what I mean by friends becoming enemies becoming friends is better than just enemies becoming friends. Because if you don't get, much like I said in my second slide on this, players do not care about all the hard work you put into things if you don't get them invested. So this is a way to help ensure they're invested in the survival of this given NPC and will actually want to recruit him rather than just be like, yeah, fuck you, get out of here. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about some of these tips and tricks that I just designed here? Oh, and the number 7 goes with what I talked about with number 1. Players... Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Oops. I was typing in my other monitor. This is the easiest thing. Players love cute shit and animals. If you want to get the players invested in something, No matter what, the easiest way to do it is make something cute, make something a cute animal that they can adopt as a pet. Those are like the two easiest ways to get the players invested. For example, in my first adventure, when they're trying to find the trafficked monster children, once they rescue everybody, I made damn sure that each of those kids pulled as many heartstrings as possible of the players. Like, for example, one of the children was a Lamia girl, who I do it as like Snake Lamia from anime. And so, yeah, so she was this little snake girl, and she was really shy, and she was like, "Thank you so much for saving me. And I was so scared." And then she like wrapped her tail around one of their legs and hugged them. And oh man, that liquefied all players' heartstrings. So they became madly involved in the going on of what's her name? It was Cleotrixia. Or, I can't remember. I think it was Cleotrixia was the Lamia. And then when the reason why there was a timeline about when they had to rescue the children was because one of the children was a dryad, was a little dryad sapling girl named I think her name was Orchid, and her fairy dragon best friend, and the bad guy religious cultist had chopped down her dryad hearth tree in order to kidnap her, and so without her hearth tree she was dying, and so they were going to try and get her basically replanted into another tree, but that was the reason why there was a timeline, because if they took too long, she was going to die. And so then when they were progressing further, when they were trying to find out like everything around her, what was it called? Everything around her disappearance and everything, they talked to her family, which was another great thing for playing up the heartstrings of a party, and also the importance why showing is so much more important than telling. Describe, describe, describe. Don't just say, the people miss their child or whatever. Show the pain. Show the anguish. For instance, all of these people were dryads. They were in a fey grove. And so the players enter this grove, and out of all these different uniquely marked trees, they basically see these wooden people emerge from them, and they all move weirdly, they speak weirdly. I describe it as like, they sound like wind blowing through willows, the crackling of autumn leaves when they're actually talking, and I made them have this like really kind of paced speech, and I would show all their emotions physically on the dryad themselves. So as they talked about Orchid being missing, their leaves began to like wither and droop on them, and it sounded like the sound of like cracking wood as they were like weeping. And then as they were talking about who had taken her and what had happened, they began to have thorns emerge from them, and their voices became much more like the thundering of an oak being cut down and everything. And so they became more razored and like more frantic, and they were surrounding the players with thorns and everything. And so that's some of the ways that it got conveyed. But then you build off of that, because, but wait, there's more. When they got Orchid back to her grove and got her reattuned with her hearth tree, she emerged happy and healthy, and then she proceeded to grow a bunch of orchids out of her bark, and she made little flower wreaths for each of the different players and gave them a little flower wreath crown to put on their heads. And oh my god, did the players love that shit. And because it was orchids, and then like the little fairy dragon would fly over and nest on their shoulder and give them little little snake kisses with their tongue coming out and stuff. Oh my god, players love that stuff. So cute things is always the easiest way to convey things. I know, like, and this is what creates lasting memories of some of these NPCs. Life is a theme park, but you're the main attraction. Ah, thank you, Space. Go to sleep, Space. I appreciate you being here and being adorable, but go to sleep. Party off because it results in unneeded combat. Oh, I gotcha, Dandy. I gotcha. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about some of these tips and tricks of storytelling? A lot of it just comes down to make sure the players are invested and let them talk to people before they fight people. That's a lot of it. If there aren't any questions, we're going to talk about boss fights. Everybody loves boss fights. Boss fight guide. All right. Rule number 1. Do not rely on a single boss. Why do I hear boss music? This is Chop Suey, Bardcore. Do not rely on a single boss. I cannot relay this enough. This is like the most important rule of campaign design, of boss fight design, anything. Do not rely on a single boss. No matter how badass you think that boss is, players become an elite force of well-coordinated killing machines when they are confronted with a single foe. Are you a camera? Because every time I look at you, I smile. Oh, Space. Yeah, and if you want to put a single boss against the party, you know what you need to do? Dark Souls. You need to do different phases. Oh shit, wrong screen. Not underline this, but if one boss, you must do phases. A la Dark Souls. So this is one thing, like, if you want to have a bad guy who's a single boss, you better make sure that this isn't even my final form comes up into play. Yeah, like, for example, in Tyranny of Dragons campaign I played in, I was a dragon-slaying paladin. I was a paladin of Bahamut who lived her life to kill fucking dragons. And our party of 4 people became the most elite dragon slayers ever. Like at level 12, we killed an ancient red dragon. Like no problem either. We fucking rocked that thing. Because when you put all of your eggs in a single basket, you make yourself susceptible to failing a single dice roll, the players rolling exceptionally well, and then suddenly a lot of the threat of your boss is no longer there. If there wasn't any gravity on Earth, I would still fall for you. Oh, Space. That means a lot to me, because you're Space. I give 2 nuzzles. Oh, welcome, Avis. Welcome, welcome. Well, you give me nuzzles, I give you a shout-out. Avis is a very lewd NSFW artist and streamer. He is a cute breedable catboy. Catboy doll, be sure to check him out. Thank you for coming by. Happy to have you. So, but for example, what is a boss phase? I had a bad guy that was talking about the mini-arc point that we were bringing up before. I had 3 adventure arc about fighting this religious fanatical cult known as the Seekers of the Flame. And the Seekers of the Flame were led by an entity known as a Radiant Idol. A Radiant Idol is basically a celestial who has fallen from grace because they became obsessed with their own divinity and want people to worship them as a god. DM got a high-stakes, sorrowful fight with a high-level monk NPC who was a former friend and colleague We bodied him so hard it killed all dramatic tension. Yes, exactly, Alistair Nia. That is the opposite of what you want to happen. So, the first part of the arc was the rescuing of the human trafficked monster girls. The second part of the arc was they basically triggered a reverse ambush against these fanatics who were trying to capture basically the Pope of the Silver Flame. And then the, well, I actually chose Bassi. I'm going to go into description of what I chose for my Radiant Idol, because I thought it was way cooler. And then the third one was they launched this assault against the hideouts of the Seekers of the Flame. And their intelligence indicates that the Seeker himself is located at the place they're attacking. So they go to attack it. They fight waves of minion bad guys who basically just absorb resources, because that's all that minions are good for. And then they confront the bad guy himself. Yes, this is the one you tried to suplex into the lava. They fight the bad guy himself. Now, previously, this Radiant Idol was taking the form of a beautiful elf that was wreathed in fire. And so he's being, you know, all charming and stuff, and I used the stats of a Red Dragon Gladiator for the first phase of the fight. So the players are fighting him, and, you know, they kick his ass pretty quick in that phase. And they're feeling pretty good about themselves as they beat him. But as they beat him, they use a bunch of resources in, like, their opening salvos against him. So at that point, he begins to get wreathed in flame, and the flame begins to, like, turn this black and purple and, like, you know, green, like, pus-like color. And then out of the flame emerges this 10-foot tall angelic woman where I just, you know, part of the basis was this artwork I found on Google Images for inspiration, who had a halo made of razor blades literally sprouting out of her neck. Her wings were these razor-bladed chains that were wrapped around her body with barbs digging into the flesh, and where each puncture wound happened, basically black, noxious, disease-ridden ichor would pour out of it. And two giant flailing barbs of these chains was basically surrounding her since her arms were pressed against her. And her teeth were all rotted and black, and as she talked, you know, that same black bile would start coming from her lips and pour down her face. And at that point, she was like, you know, basically, like, you dare challenge that I am a god, and you will die in your heresy. And the players were, suffice to say, a bit intimidated. Especially because at that point, she went full power and started unleashing all of her attacks. And when you see, like, half of your HP get dropped as you get slammed back to back by these, you know, corrupted necrotic chains, you know, this is, suddenly the fight becomes a very different situation. And they realized this was not all they had bargained for. And so, in the end, literally three members of the party and the NPC companion they had brought along had either been knocked unconscious or were under under her aura of false divinity, so they couldn't attack her. The barbarian did try to suplex her into lava, but that didn't work. And the only person left standing was their celestial Azamir warlock, who was in Super Saiyan mode, flying around with celestial light. And literally, I was getting ready the rest of their NPC companions to show up to help the party if I ended up dropping the warlock. But she was able to critical on a Eldritch Blast that ended up being the final thing they needed to drop the bad guy. And so with that, you know, she screamed and, you know, began getting pulled into the earth as basically hellfire cracks appeared in the ground and started tearing her apart and dragging her into the hells. Yep, clutch victory. So, like, that's an example of a multi-phase boss fight. And that also, you know, adds to the intimidation level. The moment you subvert the player's expectations of how much of a badass the players are, you begin to make them reevaluate. So, in the alternative of having a single boss fight with multiple phases, option 2 is have a group of powerful bad guys. So this is option 2. So instead of having a singular person to fight in a battle, instead have multiple people. For example, the Ashbringers in my campaign, there are 7 of them. And as the players found out in one of their adventures, all 7 of them coordinate very well with each other. And that makes them exponentially more powerful and also exponentially more intimidating as an antagonist, because then you can't focus fire to the same degree of using your resources and abilities as you could against a singular person. So that's number 2. That's your other way to do the boss fight guide. And then option 3 was what Bassie was outlining, which is minions to absorb resources and big bad to support. Oh, thank you for the follow, Sentinel Uwu. Welcome, welcome. I hope you enjoyed your Astolfo. So this is the option of, like, the quintessential, like, lots of little bad guys or lesser bad guys to basically wear down the players. Oh, well, whatever, Bassie. To wear down the players' resources, and before they come into the final confrontation with your bad guy. Made you say, "Oh, just here to learn." Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes. Yeah, and this is another example. I did both. I double fucked my party. I had them do 3 different minion fights before they fought the boss, and then there was a 2-stage boss fight. Oh, that's what you mean. You mean more the narrative thing. Yeah, that's a different way to do storytelling in general. And so, by the way, for anybody who's curious, I am going to post up this VOD on my YouTube. If you type in !YouTube into chat, you'll take you to my YouTube channel where, if you're interested in these kind of D&D talks, I've made one guide about how to make Arcanotech in D&D, as well as I've done a 5.5-hour, 2 different VODs talking about world building for a fantasy world I've been working on. So if you're interested in more of these kind of discussions and my thought process, be sure to check them out. So there you go. This is 3 different ways that you can approach an actual boss fight to basically amp it up to make sure that it has enough impact. And then here is my 4th one. This is I'm going to call this extra spicy number 4. We're going to fucking underline this. There we go. Number 4. Learn from MMOs and have fight mechanics. Have fight mechanics and environmental tables. This is extra spicy, Sentinel. What does this mean? If there is one thing you can say about an MMORPG, is that they will generally design a boss fight to be real good, and that it's not just an HP sink. It should never be just players doing attacks and boss taking hit points off. And so, great things is to put in things like, there's mechanics, like, like in the Arcane Arena, for example, I had a table of, in one of the fights, there was a specific area that was a safe space. Everywhere outside of that area would suffer wild magic results every turn. So, lots of wacky shit happens. And so they would have to fight in that given square against 2 very powerful melee combatants. So that was like part of the trade-off. The second one was they were fighting over a volcano, and there was a table of different volcanic things that happened, such as random players getting hit by fire, or random players getting, blasted with poisonous gas and stuff every round. And so there was a chance of like something happening to you everywhere you were, and you had to kind of move according to that. Option 3 was a fight that I did that was literally inside of an elemental. They were trying to capture the elemental core out of a Tempest, which if you've ever read, I don't know if it's Mordecai's Tome of Foes or Volo's Guide to Monsters or whatever. It's one of those two. It's a CR like 23 elemental spirit of air. And so they're fighting inside of one to try and put down these elemental tethers. Yeah, they have to put down 5 elemental tethers to basically anchor the elemental spirit's essence so that they can capture it. And so while they're doing that, every time they put down an anchor, a group of bad guy elementals would randomly spawn to try and stop them and disrupt the anchor. If they disrupted the anchor, that means the party would have to re-put down the anchor, and more bad guys would spawn. And so this gave them more pressure to ensure that they appropriately guarded things. In addition to this, there was a chance every round that either a gust of wind would blow in from a certain direction and basically smack the players around, and there were these big chunks of floating stone in the area that the players could collide with, or use as cover if need be. And there was also the chance of lightning bolts randomly striking them inside of the elemental. So, oh hey Star, welcome. But yeah, so that's an example of like stuff that is beyond the fight itself that can add so much more tension, so many more unknown factors for the players to have to deal with than simply just having the players versus the bad guy in a given room. In addition, just give your bad guys like layer actions and shit. Like, let them do those kind of things. You want to amp up stuff? Fuck it. Let it happen. I love these kind of things. Like, I had and for using the inspiration of MMO fights, at one point the players had to do, if any of you have played World of Warcraft, there is a 4 horseman fight. And a 4 horseman fight is, basically there are 4 bad guys that you have to take down all 4 of them at the same time. Otherwise, when you take one down, they'll pop back up at full health. So, that's another way that you can use weaker enemies to basically create a threat that would be just as significant as if you used a single powerful person. Because you have 4 people, they got their timing wrong, they only killed 3 of them, well, those 3 respawn at the start of the next turn. So that was a struggle for my players to pick up on. They could not understand that fight until I made it more apparent to them. But yeah, this is something I've learned from a lot of different campaigns I've run over the years. Like, MMO fight mechanics are really cool, especially because it can take any normal opponent, any normal boss fight, and make it an entirely different experience. So, anybody have any questions about my boss fight guide? Or these are just tips about how to do a really satisfactory boss fight. And I'm a personal fan of, I like boss fights. I think they're a lot of fun. I played a lot of MMOs. And so I always try to have, especially like the end of a mini campaign arc, there's gotta be a big boss at the end of it. Like, there's gotta be. It's gotta all culminate with something. Yeah, I understand that, Umbra. And balancing... You're now consuming delicious estrogen. Balancing is difficult. And balancing is also something that you're gonna have to do on the spot. If you made something too dangerous, like whenever you're not playing in a module, you basically have to assume that you are probably going to make something more dangerous than the players can handle. And so you get around that by you cheat. Give your bad guys, if you see that you have wildly overestimated the abilities of your party, Make your bad guys make less attacks. Get rid of special abilities that they have. Gonna go head out to eat. Okay, Bassie, enjoy your meal. Thank you for coming by. I hope you have good noms. Yes, the modules are dangerous. The modules are very poorly balanced at times. What I'll say is, like, every module I've played in 3 of them. They start off way more difficult than they have any right to be when you're low level. But then as they give you more money and you get more powerful, they become super easy. You've had the opposite problem. You've made your fights too weak. Well, they just give people more bad guys. I mean, more abilities. Make them stronger. Like, I also use hit points as a guide. So if my players are just absolutely curb stomping a given bad guy I sent against them, I'll just give them more HP. The players don't know how much HP something has, and if they say they do, then they are assuming incorrectly because it's your campaign and you can do whatever you want. Switch between you and Key. Okay, well, I appreciate it, Star. I do so love Key. Alright, so unless we have any questions about this, we are going to talk about our last hour here. I would never give a boss 3,000 HP. If I have to give the boss 3,000 HP, they probably shouldn't be static. That's like a waste of everybody's time because it's an HP sponge at that point, which isn't a terribly enjoyable experience. No, DM uses the mechanics from MMOs, but it wouldn't be... Yeah. I don't think HP sponges is ever the solution. I'll like double like a boss's HP if I want to, just to beat up the players a bit more before it dies. But I'm never gonna like make an irrationally high number for them to overcome. If something has 3,000 HP, it probably should die narratively rather than in a specific boss fight. Alright, so all roads lead to the end. Lead to the end. This is probably the final point I'm going to be talking about tonight, because we're in our last hour or so here. Everything in a campaign... Okay, I'm going to say the most satisfying experience in a campaign is when everything mattered and builds to a climax. I know you're all going to do a phrasing. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do to ensure a satisfying resolution of your campaign. Is everything has to matter. Like,
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
I know the perfect time for subtext. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. Can we please have a shout out for Cereza, my favorite little foxo? Be sure to check her out. She's adorable, she's hilarious, she's breedable, she's everything you could want in a fox. I hope you're having a good night, Cereza. But what do I mean by everything mattered and builds to a climax? Oh, I'm sorry you're sick, Cereza, but I'm glad you came by. We're talking about the final points of my campaign design analysis. Okay, so everything mattered and built to a climax. What does this mean? Submissive and breedable, ooh-woo. That means along the way, all of the adventures, the NPCs the party has met, the bad guys they've defeated, etc. It should all culminate in that final moment of the campaign. Like, the final time that they face the threat, the big bad guy, whatever it is, that the whole campaign has been leading to. All of that stuff should build up. The greatest example of this is, in, spoiler alert, in Avengers Endgame. When everything builds up to all the portals opening at the end. That is a quintessential example of everything mattering in a campaign. So, for example, in my campaign, the players are currently amassing their allies to fight the Ashbringers, who have the WMD at this point. And what they've done now is they are collecting all of their allies, who are all people that they've met over the course of their adventures, who have befriended the party, who have a vested interest in seeing the party succeed, who they all have attachments to in one way or another. And so that means that everything they've done along the way, it's led to this point. The people that they saved, the lives that they bettered, the people that they helped, all of those things mattered. And in the end, that is the most important thing for them to be able to overcome the trials that will face them when it all goes down. Is that they are not the people that started this. They are people who have grown over the course of this and are better for all the experiences they've been through. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as you design like side quests and interlude adventures and stuff for your players, is all of it is building these bonds with these characters, building these bonds, their investment in the story, their investment in the villains, their investment in having people that are worth saving at the end of this. Do the opposite of Mass Effect 3, yes. And so when it all comes down, like, this is the reward for everything they've done along the way, is this climax. And I assume the players are going to triumph in the end. They did everything they could, they got all the allies they could, they will succeed. It's just a matter of how. And what it costs to achieve. So that's what I mean by everything matters and builds to a climax, which I think is the most important thing about when you're doing campaign design. Is never feel like they did something and it just ended there. Like a side quest shouldn't just end. It should have created something, a lasting aspect that the players can utilize later on. And thank you for the redeem in Santa Star. Will it cost everything? Get your hugging utensils ready, everyone, because I'm coming in deep. And a 3, and a 2, and a burr. There you go. A big Death Knight hug from me to you. I hope you enjoyed it. Number 2. Ensure player created arcs resolve. Now, the greatest thing a player can ever do for you as a DM and as a campaign designer is write a backstory. Create a backstory. Create a motivation for why this player or why this character is invested in the storyline. And if they have set up, if their goal is to kill God at the end of it, you best believe you better have a campaign that ends up with them killing God at some point. They have to square up with God. And that's what gives you really lasting memories as both a DM and as a player, is when you've developed these paths, these arcs that the players have created, and ensure that they are being appropriately rewarded for the effort they put into in helping you build your world and helping make sure that they were playing a complex person. Like, a player creating a backstory and a motivation is literally writing you adventures for you. And that's amazing. Me and Twitch, most of the icons are blocked just now because I was no longer a follower? What? That's weird. So, I think it's very important that if your players are designing arcs for them, you better give it to them. Make sure that they complete. You bring them to climax, to fulfillment. Number 3. This is, I'm gonna call, I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this. It's really hard for me to explain this right now. We're gonna say, this goes back to what I was previously talking about. If the end is battling the BBG at no point prior should fighting the BBG be an objective. Or be an option. I'll say that better. A ridiculous amount of points, so woo for me. Alright. All you foxos, doggos, and wolfos out there in chat, please feel free to join in with me for this a woo. Because here we go. A woo! A woo! A woo! There you go. A simple a woo from me to you. And, for example, I gotta reach out to you about my backstory. Okay. Real late in the game for you to be telling me about your backstory, but please feel free to let me know. So, what do I mean by this? I'm enjoying your content. Well, I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do, Sentinel. I live to please. For Obsidia. Oh, thank you, Cereza. Little Cereza. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So, this also feeds off of my thing about creating tension for the boss. It's actually social now, Brainbuster. I changed it because everyone was getting it wrong. So, for example, I had an adventure, which was Adventure 8 out of 15. And technically, this adventure was the first of the beginning, really, of the main investment in the storyline for the actual, like, stopping the WMD. And what this adventure was the players get hired to defend this guy they had met in a previous adventure as his bodyguards for a fancy gala on a giant airship that they had helped build in a previous adventure. You know, you see what I'm saying here with making sure everything connects, everything matters. Hello, Shashka. Welcome to the stream. Happy to have you. Thank you for the follow. I hope you enjoyed your Astolfo. And so they're going on this, and this of course, this giant airship is called, what did I call it? I think I called it the Behemoth. Let me scroll up for a second, because it's a big joke that I call it this. The Goliath. The Goliath is the name of the airship. So the Goliath is this massive airship that was made, supposedly an uncrashable luxury ship. You know, if you can see where the plot is going. The most sophisticated, most advanced, could never crash. Perfectly safe. And so, the players get hired to be the bodyguard for this dude on this ship. And the event that's going on is Repose Day, which is it's basically like the Memorial Day of Eberron that I created. And so it's commemorating the end of the last war. All of these rich people are having a big charity event, fundraiser auction, raising money for war organizations and for orphanages of war orphans, etc. Also, hello, Endless Prim. Happy to have you. Welcome, welcome. And so they're on this ship, meeting up with some NPCs that they've met previously before. Like I said, everything's connected. And while they're there, they have a chat with this random guy who preaches a very anti the established order thing. And he gives like this really impassioned, relatable experience for why this whole thing is a sham. And the person that is being glorified during this event, this war vet commander, who was famous for winning the Battle of Seven Spears, which was a massive ambush against what would then become the Ashbringers. Maybe a little foreshadowing going on here. Was getting a trophy for like his act in help bringing about the end of the war. And he gives this whole impassioned speech, and then as they're about to unveil, oh my gosh! Thank you for the raid, Small and Strong. We got a Sith Small raid. Sith Small raid, a Sith Small raid. Welcome to the stream, Small Raiders. Can we please have a raid shout out for Small, everybody's favorite big PP British cat boy, who was playing Jedi Fallen Order earlier, trying to get mastery over the light PP, but apparently becoming one with the Sith PP. He's a known British shitposter and meme lord. Be sure to check him out. He is absolutely adorable, very sweet. He's got an adorable voice. Welcome to the stream, Snappy Boy, Mimikyu Main, and Cutie Boy. Happy to have you all. My name is Obsidia. For those of you who don't know, I am a Death Knight. What is that floating behind my head? It is a bone halo made of the spines of my enemies and those I've hugged a little too tightly. Welcome to the stream. Astolfo is by my side with his trusty body pillow, as I have been explaining D&D campaign design for the last 2.5 hours. So, how was Jedi Fallen Order, Small? Welcome, Raiders. I guess Brainbuster isn't here. Oh, Brainbuster is not here. I'm sorry. Raid. I will do the shout out for you, Small and Strong TV. There we go. Be sure to check out Small. Very cute. We rated him on Wednesday. So he gives this whole speech, and at this moment is when they're doing the great did not become Sith feels bad man. Aww. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. Maybe you just need to embrace your fear. Your fear of people calling you out for the size of your pee-pee. Because it'll lead to anger, and anger leads to hate. And hate leads to Sithering. And so at the moment... I forgot to include this previously. Another thing that was being auctioned off during this event is this massive crystal known as the Heart of Darkness. And so... I'm glad you like that, Small. It was being auctioned off. And this was the objective of the Ashbringers' involvement in the adventure. They were there to steal the Heart of Darkness. You notice how that objective has nothing to do with the player's objectives. The player's objective is simply to be the bodyguard for this guy. So because of that, you can run the bad guys into the situation where they're not against the players, strictly speaking, but they will prove to be a threat to the players going forward. So as they are about to commemorate this war hero for his actions, that's when the guy they chatted to reveals himself that he had an illusion over him, and he is actually the leader of the Ashbringers. And he proceeds to impale that war vet on the spot who thought he was dead, and all of the other Ashbringers appear for the first time. The players see all of them in one place. Now remember, they've previously met 2 of the Ashbringers. They know how powerful these people are. And with a bit of a villain speech, the Ashbringers basically begin sowing chaos in the middle of this gala. And various undead and warforged terrorists and minions begin warping in across the ship. So 2 things important happen here, which show what I'm talking about with do not fight the big bad guys before they're supposed to fight the big bad guys. Number 1, all this anarchy is happening. The players now have a clear objective to get off the ship as it is beginning to crash and list as they feel the reactors inside of it breaking. And so they're trying to flee with their charge along with them. Their goal here is not to fight the Ashbringers. So they're fleeing as Ashbringer-related situations arise around them in the form of minions they have to clear through. And I also created a tally where whenever they were in a battle, I would talk about how the Ashbringers were engaging in this massive fight behind them. And then at the bottom of the screen where the players could see it, I would just put down 1 for the first round of combat, and then the second round of the combat, I would go 2. You hear the sounds of battle becoming closer. And then eventually it would get to 5. And at 5, that's when I would roll randomly to determine an Ashbringer that would show up. And the Ashbringer's job wasn't to kill them. It was just to be scary. So for instance, like they're fighting in this casino area against all these undead and warforged. And while they're fleeing through this as they hear the Ashbringers becoming closer, the Harlequin, the wizard that they had met in the first adventure, appears and she casts a lightning bolt in the direction of where some of the players were fleeing. And I just have it just shred through, various casino slot machines and stuff, and like bars and stuff, and slam through walls and just tear holes in it. And so she just starts doing this and just blowing open portions of the map and roughly targeting the area of the players, but not in such a way that I'm trying to kill them all. And so this gives the players the idea of like, yep, we're damaged. We probably shouldn't be in this fight for much longer. She also seems a lot more powerful than us. We should keep running. And so this allowed me to keep having the Ashbringers as a threat in the background, demonstrating their power, and also reiterate the fact that there is this time sensitivity to them getting off the ship. Now, the second thing I did in that fight to further demonstrate why the bad guys were powerful without having to have the players fight the bad guys was a bit of a brief explanation of Eberron lore. During the last war, one of the nations, Karnath, they were famous for using a lot of undead during the war. So they used a lot of undead. That was their big shtick. So I thought it was perfectly rational that after the war, intelligent undead who were a part of Karnath would proceed to basically be like veterans of any country after a war. And so they basically formed a like a Veterans of Foreign Wars type organization. Oh, hello, Hash and Slack and Nazragon 503. Welcome to the stream. I hope you enjoyed your Astolfos. Thank you for the follow. Yes, exactly, Sentinel, exactly. So, as a part of this, I have this undead rights organization in the country, which is seeking the advocacy for and perpetuation of undead veterans' rights within Karnath. And I have it led by two lesbian undead, the Ladies Lever, which was a lich cleric of basically the god of immortality, and it was a half-elf lich cleric of the god of immortality, and then a half-orc vampire paladin of the god of immortality. And they were lesbians, and their whole shtick was they were so dedicated to defending their national cause that they chose to willingly become undead so that they could basically fight for Karnath's cause for all time. And then their second explanation was that they loved each other so much they became undead because one lifetime was not enough to love someone, and so they thought it'd be better to be with each other forever. And these two NPCs are friendly. Like, these aren't bad guys. And so the players had a chance to talk to them, and they were hilarious. If you're from America and you've ever had a chance to talk to veterans or like currently active duty military people, there's like a very specific way that they act. It's like a very kind of, crass brashness and confidence. And so they're very much like that. I leaned very heavily into that. So while the Ashbringers are attacking this assembly as a whole, I have Harlequin chuck like a fireball, or no, it was a vitriolic sphere, so a ball of acid, just into the crowd of people to cause suffering. And so I had it land on the area where the Ladies Lever were, and so at that moment they got to see the cleric basically erect a swirling shield of souls and necrotic energy to basically shield all of her delegation as the acid collided with it and then fell over onto some of the people nearby, and you got to see them melt and scream in front of you. And so at that, she then began counter-throwing, spells back at the Ashbringers, and this proved to be something to show, oh man, this is some real heavyweight action going on. And then as the players are fleeing through the ship trying to get to the surface, at one point, they see part of the bulkhead of the ship just tear open as the vampire Lady Lever is basically locked in melee combat, like punching and wrestling with the elf barbarian that they had met in the second adventure, just like slamming through the bulkhead as the players are running through the ship. And so that further just puts up the power level of your bad guys. when you have strong people that are resisting them and still can't seem to overcome them. Because everyone knows how powerful a vampire and a lich are. So you got that clear milestone of strength. So these are some of the tools for showing the risk of the bad guys without having to have the bad guys necessarily be locked in a battle to the death against the party beforehand. But how are you doing tonight, Nazragon? How are you doing tonight, Hash? I hope you guys are having great nights. We are just on the tail end of our campaign design discussion. I will be posting this VOD on my YouTube if you want to check it out. I'll probably post up this weekend when I upload all the streams of the week. But yeah, so those are some of the, I would say those are some of the big things you can do to ensure that when the end comes, you have reached a satisfying conclusion to your story. And I think you should keep all of these in mind as you're doing your story so that you can be able to ensure you hit all of those milestones along the way of fulfilling notes. And at the beginning of the stream, I talked about how I designed an episodic campaign. And what does that mean? It was that each adventure is a self-contained adventure with a beginning, middle, and end. So they can be picked up and put down at our leisure. However, each one of those was strung into 3 overall arcs. I mean, it was put into a 3-adventure arc. So each arc would give you a satisfying conclusion to the story that had been built up in the previous 3 adventures, as well as each adventure gives you a satisfying conclusion to all of your work that adventure. Like, you've been hearing this whole adventure about how you've been fighting, or about how you're supposed to kill this, or save all these monster kids from being trafficked. Guess what? At the end of that adventure, you're saving those kids from being trafficked. Your goal is to help the Fae reactivate the Wild Hunt. Guess what? At the end of that adventure, you help the Fae reactivate the Wild Hunt. So it's stuff like that. Those are things you can do to basically give lots of wins along the way for the party, because it's a hard sell for a player when you constantly have loose ends, and you don't ever get that feeling you don't ever get that release of being able to stop the evil plot of a given situation. So those are things to keep in mind, and something that I did that creates a linear plot but still allows a great deal of freedom and satisfaction for the player's choices along the way. Okay. I've been talking for 2.5 hours. Does anyone have any questions about anything I raised? Any thoughts about any of the stuff I raised? Do you just think I'm absolutely wrong about anything I talked about? Yeah, I might need to look back at the VOD. I would highly recommend watching the VOD. My biased opinion. But I do feel like I talked about a lot of really good ideas in here that could give other DMs inspirations for their own games. Oh, sorry, shoulders are sore. Yeah, so I guess without further ado, those are some of the highlights of how to design a campaign for it to be satisfying. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you want me to do how do you manage incorporating characters' backgrounds? Easy peasy. I'm glad you asked that, Sentinel. Easiest thing is, like I said originally, if a player writes a backstory and it's not stupid, make that backstory a part of your story. Even if you're writing a linear story which has a predetermined end against a specific bad guy, fucking still give them their side quests. Like, allow them to explore that. Like, the other VODs of previous talks uploaded. Yes, there are my other world-building VODs. But yeah, so you do that. That's one big thing, is no matter how linear your story is, no matter how much you've pre-written, create that things to be added into it. I'll use an example here of Brainbuster. So, in my campaign, Brainbuster was a young, dumb, and full of cum half-orc barbarian. He was Aki Wolfbiter was a young half-orc barbarian. He's literally like 18. He comes from basically a tribal area of humans and orcs. His mom was the orc. His dad was the human. His mom was the big, I'm dead. His mom was the big like tough fighter girl. His dad was like basically a trader, like kind of like a tribal trader and stuff. And so he was more of the brains mercantile part of it. And so Aki's parents were both alive, throughout the whole campaign. That's an important thing to know. He's not like some tragic story where his parents are dead. No, his parents were alive. And once I found out his parents were alive, you goddamn right. His parents were a part of the campaign. So he was leaving home to basically go make his own legend because he kind of ran out of advancement opportunities at home. And he wanted a chance to see the world, the greater world as a whole. So there's always this, thing about Aki was a fish out of water in the modern world. And another important thing to note here is this is Brainbuster's first time playing Dungeons and Dragons. So this is his first game. He doesn't know all the stuff about it. He doesn't know all the world things. He doesn't have a lot of these familiarities. So this is like in a no pressure situation. This is his first exposure to this forever. And so no pressure on me to make sure it's satisfying. So one of the things that I created for my version of Eberron is the telegraph service, basically. There is one of the dragon marked houses is in charge of magical communication. So I thought it was perfectly rational for them to have telegraphs. So as the campaign progressed, I had Aki's parents send him a telegraph. And the telegraph was done like a transcript. So it said Aki's mother says X and Aki's father says Y. The transcriber says Z, etc. And it was really funny for them basically being his parents and talking to him about his adventures. And then he would send telegraphs back. And another important thing to know is that during the course of this adventure, Aki decided to use... and of course, I made his parents really bad at technology. His mom is like, "You're trying to tell me that this is recording everything I'm saying? That's ridiculous." And so Aki picked up the sword of the Houndmaster of the Wild Hunt. And so it began to slowly corrupt him with Fey energy. And it became this huge point of his personal journey was his struggle to come to terms with how he is changing while using the sword and the effect that the sword is having on him. So he wrote a very impassioned telegraph to his parents talking about it. And I had his dad do a telegraph back, basically giving him moral support and telling him that his parents would always love him no matter what. And he was stronger than both of them, and he could do anything if he put his mind to it, etc. So, eventually, in the adventure where they go reactivate the Wild Hunt, Aki chose to turn down the offer of being the next Houndmaster of the Wild Hunt. He turned it down, he relinquished the sword, and he decided to go back to who he was. And thank you for the raid, Nina, or I'm pretty sure you're Nina. Again, Dragon King, welcome, welcome. How was Apex Legends? Happy to have you. Dragon Empire raid, welcome, welcome, welcome. So what is all this leading to? Now, here's another important thing. All this communication happened about, yeah, Nina is good. I was making sure it was Nina. All this important communication happened about his struggles. So he never sent another telegraph back to his parents to tell them that he turned down the offer of being the Houndmaster. So why does this matter? Later on, in the third adventure about the Fae, I decided to bring all this full circle. So, as they're doing this adventure where they are doing the Fae dating sim, which I'm actually going to do another note about spicing up your content. Not your content, but like your campaign, by having varying tones and conduct. So as they did this whole little adventure for the Fae, doing the dating sim, to get the Wild Hunt to help them during the final battle, once they did it and they felt very satisfied with themselves, I had the Wild Hunt appear. And out of the mist came this tall figure wrapped in hunting leathers with their face behind, like a hooded cloak and like snarling wolf mask. With the Houndmaster's blade on their back, the sign that they are the new Houndmaster. The sword was named Heel because they're Houndmaster, and you tell a dog to heel. And they came striding up and walked right up into Aki's face. And at that point, they grabbed Aki and hugged him, which left Aki very confused. And then the person lowered their hood and took off their mask, and it was revealed it was Aki's mom, the orc. Yep. And she now looked to be much more like a Fae orc. Like, she was, she was always towering over him. Her figure was much, more wiry muscle now. Her ears were more pointed. Her features more refined and attractive. And Aki was like, what, why are you here? And she explained that when he never sent the letter home, she freaked out and panicked and raged and wanted to hunt down the Fae because she in her own weakness did not think he was strong enough to resist the call of the Houndmaster. And so she ultimately confronted the Wild Hunt and chose to take on the burden of being the new Houndmaster so that Aki wouldn't. Only then did she find out that he had already refused. Yeah, fucking plot twist, am I right? I told Brainbuster ahead of time, I'm like, get ready, I'm about to fucking traumatize your character. Yeah, she basically became an Amazon woman. So Aki was like freaking out, and she basically told him that, it wasn't his fault. It was her fault because she always knew that he was stronger than her or his father. And it was only because she was weak that she didn't believe in him enough to think he would have made the right choice. And so, in part, this was her penance for basically not believing in him and the warrior he had become. And then secondly, she said that as the world was changing and things became more advanced, the civilized nations of the world became more powerful, there just really wasn't much room left in it for people like her. And so, this allows her to ride eternal, strong and glorious across the multiverse. And, this was probably the best fate she ever could have hoped for, because she could fight and continue to basically find purpose in a world that no longer needed her. So Aki had an entire emotional breakdown over that. So that's what I'm talking about for how do you weave a person's background into the story. All of this stuff that I've talked about with Aki, that was all just things I added to a story I already created. You create the frameworks of the story, and then you can always fill in things that your players create on their own. The players' stories, the players' backgrounds, the players' love interests, etc. So that's an example of how I can weave it in. Also, another example, the warlock in the party was a veteran from the war who, in the storyline that he created for his character's background, she was framed for basically her whole squad died one day, and she got framed for it, but ended up getting a military tribunal and was determined not to be guilty. And so she doesn't know what happened to her squad, and it bothered her every day that she didn't know. So I took this concept and wove it into the story that I had already written to make it an integral part about what had happened. So, for example, the big bad guys, the Ashbringers, are a product of basically a super soldier program. And so I eventually revealed that the Warlock's squad had been written off by her government as test subjects for the super soldier program to experiment on. And she was left mind wiped as the fall guy for the disappearance of them. And they were experimented on and they were killed because of it in the initial exposure. I then had the boss fight of that adventure was basically an amalgam entity made up of all of her former squad mates combined who were driven insane with the magical experimentations that had happened to her. Happened to them, trying to basically get vengeance for the fact that the Warlock did this to them and let this happen to them. So I took my pre-existing story and plans and made the Warlock's character's background an integral part of that. That is an example of stuff you can do. Penance said she become the Doomslayer. Yep, basically, Michael. And I'm sorry for not addressing what you said, Nina, but yeah, Brainbuster's got it right. I've been doing a discussion and Q&A on D&D experience, campaign design, and information to help potential DMs. Hoplala got very X-Files-y at the end. Yep. Because another reoccurring trend of, like, I have 3 reoccurring bad guys in any campaign I do. 1, racism. Bigotry as a whole. 2, nationalism and religious fanaticism. And 3, capitalism. So part of the big bad guy plan right now is to basically give these war criminals this weapon so that they restart the last war, and the dragon-marked and factions within the dragon-marked houses can profiteer as war profiteers, like basically like military-industrial complex stuff. So they basically have been funding these terrorists to try and restart the war, because capitalism is always evil. And so, yeah, there you go. So that's an example of how I weaved in the characters' backgrounds into the story. I was also prepared for Aki's plotline, for him to accept the role of being the new Houndmaster. Like, for instance, I asked Brainbuster ahead of time. I'm like, dude, which way do you think you're going to go with this? It would help me know if you plan on accepting the offer to be the Houndmaster or not. Because if he did, he was going to leave the campaign and become the new Houndmaster, and he would make a new character, obviously. And then when they got to the 3rd Fey adventure, when they met the Wild Hunt, they would meet Aki as the new Houndmaster. See, everything's connected, everything matters, and it makes an NPC just more important when the players have a personal connection to them. So there's Sundowner asking you to give war a chance. Okay. Any other questions? I'm sorry, Chris. The government hates you. Yeah, Brainbuster. Had you accepted the job as Houndmaster, you were going to be the person the party met at the end. At the end of that Fey adventure. Yeah, Aki the Houndmaster would have been pretty badass, because the end battle is you guys summoning all of your allies to help you, and having the Wild Hunt show up being led by Aki as the Houndmaster, riding with the party one last time, that would have been pretty badass. Instead, it's going to be Aki's mom as the Houndmaster, riding with her son one last time. Alright, any other questions? And as I said at the beginning, this is you and your 4 nerdiest friends having fun. So anything you can do to ensure that people have fun, to ensure that they reach a satisfying conclusion for their characters and their character choices, that's what people are going to remember about your game. That's what you're going to enjoy the most about this, and that's what's going to create the best memories of your time together. Whew. All right. Nobody has any other questions. I think that's probably a good place to wrap things up for tonight. If you liked this kind of content, I I am more than happy to do more streams like this in the future. If you've got like particular topics you would like me to discuss, let me know. I can raise them. I've got a whole nother speech I can do about description, using description to tell a story, involving a previous campaign I ran, which I think could be really enjoyable for people in the sense of the show not tell philosophy in action. Definitely watch your stuff more. I like your style. All right, well, thank you. Also, you just saw it, but you know what that means. If you haven't done so already, please give me a follow here on Twitch. Give me a sub over on YouTube where I post up the full VODs of all my streams if you want to watch all of this from the start and to have it for future reference. As well as you get YouTube-specific content. Like I've done several short videos and memes and stuff on my YouTube page. Every little bit counts. I appreciate if you subscribe. In addition, you can follow my Twitter and you can join our Discord, the Eternal Citadel, and be a part of our incredible community. And you can give me input and feedback about different streams you'd like me to do in the future. Hail the Eternal Death Knight. Alright, let's hop on over to a different part of the throne room. Let's turn off the BGM. There we go. Whew. Alright. If you don't follow City, what are you waiting for? You could get this grade A Goth Knight GF waifu action. You're just sitting on it right now. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate everybody who stuck around, especially from the start, everyone who stopped by. All of it means so much to me, and I'm really thankful that you guys all enjoyed this experience. And then, what else was I gonna say? Oh my gosh. I want you all to know that as long as you're in my stream, you're a beautiful, valid, and amazing person. I hope you guys enjoy spending your time with me nearly as much as I enjoy spending it with you. Piganator, thank you for the 100 bits! This stream was brought to you by Mage Brand Mage Hand. Remember, anytime you need magic-based movement services, Mage Brand Mage Hand. That's another joke I can tell you guys, another stream. Piganator is one of my players from a previous campaign. He was also the DM of several of my 5th edition campaigns I played in. He's amazing. He's also going to be a VTuber soon, a Cthulhu VTuber, so be sure to check him out. He is amazing. Thank you for the follow or the subscribe over on YouTube, Chosen One. I appreciate it. All right, and before we go, I'll give you all a big Death Knight hug. So get your hugging utensils ready, everyone, because I'm coming in deep. And a 3, and a 2, and a burr. There you go. A big Death Knight hug from me to you. I hope you enjoyed that. Gotta take those spines before leaving spine tax. God bless some of those characters and stories. I know. I'm getting art made of Ivy, Picadator, so I'm super pumped. Alright, and, you know, going with how much I enjoy sharing this all, never forget the most important thing, which is that you brighten up so many people's lives, and never forget that, and the world is better having you in it. Okay, let's go find our raid for the night. If you're a follower, please copy down the call to hugs. If you are a sub, please copy down the knight's message. You're gonna find a raid target who is cute and streaming. Already raided her. You really like her, but we should probably raid somebody new. I raided her. You know, we're gonna raid Code. Code is currently. Thank you, Cygnus, for giving a sub to Nightbot. We're gonna go. Yeah, we'll raid Code. It's been a while since I raided Code, and Code is a good ferret. He's very funny, very British. He's been playing Total War Warhammer 3 for 3.5 hours, so he's one of the lucky ones who gets to play it. Code named Ferret. So be sure to. We're gonna go raid him, give him lots of love. He's a very cute. He has a very cute ferret girl model. He's very silly. Unfortunately, his model is not being displayed right now while he's doing Total War Warhammer, probably because of the amount of drain it would take to do it. So yeah, We might be playing D&D tomorrow night. Hopefully we are. If so, I'm gonna. If you enjoyed this D&D experience, I actually play in a Dungeons and Dragons game Saturdays with a group of other VTubers that we stream on Alistair Forgull's channel. So if you want to see me be a 7-foot tall, big Oni Tsundere, be sure to come on by. She is the Amazon waifu lesbian you wish you had. All right. Without further ado, let's go head on over. I hope you all have a wonderful night and have a blessed evening. Bye!